Welcome to Stribling's New York. I'm your host, Rob Taub, on WOR AM Radio, 710 on your digital dial and iHeartMedia Company. Stribling's New York is a show about business, culture, and people with a wide range of guests from authors, producers, actors, artists, and restaurateurs, as well as today, Robert J. Strang, who is the head of Investigative Management Group, which is a very prestigious security company. Mr. Strang began his law enforcement career in 1979 with the Federal Bureau of Investigation in Washington, D.C., went on to work for the DEA, and now has his own private firm. Welcome, Mr. Strang.
Oh, good afternoon, Rob. How are you?
Very well. So you have such a long resume, and I'm reading through all the documents about your firm. I'd rather have you explain it than have me go through and take up our whole time here.
I'll do it in a nutshell. You know, since we left the government, I've participated in a lot of different government activities, including being co-chair for the New York State Terrorism Task Force after 9/11. But we run a global investigative and security firm, and probably the best way to describe it is we're kind of a private FBI. That's how people think of us. So when they have an investigative issue, a theft, a workplace violence issue, when there's a terrorism or security matter that comes up, or they're traveling abroad, that's the kind of thing that we do. And we work all over the world. And that was helpful, especially when we were with DEA, because, you know, we have 150 offices around the world, and we have great contacts and investigators and sources in all these different locations. So in today's day and age, and especially dealing with these security problems that we have, you know, our backgrounds, unfortunately, we're in a growth business. Let me put it that way.
Well, you know, I used to work at Time Magazine, and it's amazing how things have evolved. I'm obviously still a working journalist, but we used to just come and go as we pleased back in the day when I first started there in 1983, and now we've got to go through metal detectors to get anywhere at Fox News, where I do a lot of contributions. They don't even have buttons on the elevator, so you're sent there by somebody downstairs. So corporate security has changed dramatically, and obviously there's a huge need for people who do what you do.
That's true.
So where are we going in terms of cybersecurity and just personal and private security for the future?
Well, Rob, you know, it's changing so quickly. And when you think about security, think about all the vulnerabilities that any of us have, whether you're at a home, whether you're in the office, whether you're on the road. Suddenly you have to be careful of all your electronic devices. Can someone gain access to your information? And unfortunately, we see it all the time. And remember, our own government agencies can't protect themselves from hackers from Russia and China and the Philippines and all through Eastern Europe. So if our government can't protect themselves, how does private industry and individuals protect themselves? And we'll take it one step further, you know, so somebody can steal some money out of your bank account, or they can steal your ID, they can, you know, steal your and personal information. But how about if they get into something like a utility company or a dam or a nuclear facility or through, you know, airport aviation security? Think about all the vulnerability that we have in our country, the electric grids. So clearly, from a security standpoint, this is a constant battle. It's a constant monitoring of all these different locations that are vulnerable and dangerous, and it's become a real problem for us.
And clearly you work with, this is Tony, the NYPD, right? The good men and women of the NYPD on a lot of your...
Oh, sure. I mean, we work with law enforcement all around the world. NYPD, we're lucky. You know, we've got Bill Bratton running the show with John Miller in charge of terrorism unit here, and they've got over 1,000 police officers, 1,500 now, that are in total that work on terrorism. And we're a model for the country because we have our federal FBI, our state police, and NYPD all working together here in New York City to keep us safe. Now, we have the money and the manpower, and unfortunately, we're the number one target. But other cities, in a smaller way, do exactly the kind of thing that we're doing here in New York. We've become a model for the world.
Well, that's great.
Another thing, I'm just looking at your information. So you also do forensic accounting, you do financial due diligence, and you must have to have a lot of people who are our IT specialists because there's so much cybersecurity needed now.
That's right. So, say you're looking at the bio of the company in terms of the services we provide. If you're, say, making an investment in a company in Europe, you're going to want to take a look at that company. You'll want to look at their computer system to make sure they're not compromised. You'll want to look at the principals to make sure they're not involved with terrorism, money laundering, organized crime. You want to make sure when you buy a company or make an investment that you're not buying a liability to your overall integrity. You want to make sure that you're buying somebody who has done the right things in terms of security on all of their systems. You want to buy and invest in somebody who's honest and has a good background. Those are the kinds of things that we do. We're looking at the character of the people that we're investing in. We're looking at their infrastructure. We're making certain that we're not buying something that we're going to be, or investing in something that's going to be a big problem for us down the road. And a lot of the big clients, Rob, like the pension funds and the fund of funds, some of the big multi-billion-dollar not-for-profits, they do this type of investigation on every investment they make, and not only because they don't want to have trouble. They're worried about being on the front page of the Wall Street Journal or the New York Times. It's about reputational risk as well.
Well, that was another thing I was going to mention, because that's also mentioned in your materials, is that we live in a time now with social media and instantaneous information passage. So people have to protect themselves. What can you do about that?
Well, I mean, listen, nothing is private. So every time somebody puts any information out there on social media, believe me, it's going to come back to you. I tell kids in college and high school, be careful what you put on there, because when you're applying for a job, these are the kinds of things that we're going to find. So, it tells a lot about the person's character. It tells a lot about the people that they hang around with. So anything that's out there on social media is ultimately available. So,
well,
you have to be careful.
Plus, we're also really guilty until proven innocent now, because once an accusation is made on the internet or in any kind of social media, it's pretty hard to get the correct deniability across.
Yeah, I mean, that's why, that's why companies just can't depend on social media, because there's so much misinformation. If you're going to really do a good check, a good due diligence on an individual or a company, you have to verify the information. If there's any type of accusation, you've got to go and get those court documents and make sure that this really happened. You have got to interview the individuals. You can't just go by what you read, because there's so much misinformation out there. It's incredible.
So where are we heading to the future? Do you primarily represent large corporations? Do you handle individuals? And what can just a regular guy do to protect themselves? The regular person. Sorry about the gender here.
Right. No, I get it. But, so our business, we're primarily working for corporations. We're primarily working for businesses and wealthy individuals, people with family offices, if you will,
yes,
multi-billionaires. But you know what? These same things that we do for the very wealthy, even though we're looking at their airplanes and their homes and their boats and their staffing at different locations and their pilots and their captains, the same thing is true for an individual. You just want to make sure that, one, you have the right software, that you are careful on your computer, that you don't allow people to have access. You want to be careful what you put out there on social media, where people can learn a little bit more about your private life. And the other things are, you just have to be careful. When your kids are traveling, you have to have a plan for your children to make sure that they have a place to go, that they have cash in their pocket, that they have a phone number to call. You have to have a plan for your family, where if there is something that happens, like a 9/11 or something that happened in a situation where it becomes very difficult to travel and get around and use electronics, you want to have a plan where you're going to meet, how people are going to get there. So some of the same things that we do for these big corporations and these big wealthy individuals, we can do in our own lives too, just to make them safer and to have a plan if something does happen, that everybody will be together, everybody will have, at least something in the back of their mind to know, look, I can't get on the subway, I can't drive today, but we did talk about meeting up at 79th Street and Park Avenue on the corner at a certain time, after an event. Those are the kinds of things that people can do, just common sense things from day to day.
Hey, Robert, can you tell us how big is your company, or is that a security you shouldn't tell us?
Yeah, no, well, we're pretty big. There's a lot of firms our size. We're a mid-sized firm, but our advantage is that we have about 500 contract employees around the world. So not only do we work throughout the United States, but we also work in other countries everywhere. So when people travel to, say, Bangladesh right now, or Mexico City, or Venezuela, or even going for business to the Middle East, we can make sure that their travel is safe. We can make sure that we have people on the ground there that are armed and can take them and transport them safely. Their hotel is safe. Those are the kinds of things that we do.
Do you do work in Israel? Not to focus on one.
Oh, sure. I mean, Israel, there's a lot of new technology companies where Americans are investing in those companies, and they'll want to do backgrounds on the individuals that they're investing with. They'll want to make sure that they're reputable in the community. So, Israel is certainly one of the countries that deals a lot with the U.S., and it just so happens that a lot of the companies that we deal with are in the technology business.
Now, I imagine this could be a whole other show, an hour show, but are we ready in New York City? I mean, I know I worked in government in the past. We have the best NYPD and anti-terrorism task force. But, I mean, didn't just yesterday it was reported two guys or two individuals had guns loaded in their car? They're
coming through the Holland Tunnel. Just from the look of their car, of course they were stopped.
Holland Tunnel and body armor. They caught them, so it's a good thing, right?
Right, Tony. Listen, the one thing is we're very fortunate. You said it in New York. We're the best of the best. But at the end of the day, the world is changing. These, I call it battles in a war, which they are becoming more frequent. We're seeing them more frequently in Europe and in the United States. And it is a whole conversation for another show. But, we're as ready as we can be, and we're lucky that we have the kind of police and the finances and the kind of good law enforcement in New York to keep us safe. But at the end of the day, is it possible that somebody's going to slip through? Is it possible, just like this guy through the Holland Tunnel, if he did make it through and the police didn't stop him? Is it possible? Absolutely. And that's what we worry about. And unfortunately, that's happening more frequently.
Well, this is really interesting stuff, and we would love to have you come back on the show soon, and we can get into some specific details about various security issues. Thank you so much for joining us. And
Thank you. Thank you,
we'll
Rob.
have you back
Thank you,
again
Tony.
soon. Take care.
Thanks for having me.
Okay.
Bye-bye.